Always a pleasure to welcome Steve Peters to the show. And Steve, today you went and did some research on just how important this American Thanksgiving deadline is. So give us the numbers, Petey. How important is it to be in a good spot and this week in November?
Well, it's funny because teams in the locker room right now, the players and coaches that are in a playoff spot will tell you that it matters. The teams that are out of a playoff spot and chasing that wild card spot are going to say, it doesn't matter at all. This doesn't matter. I tell you what the math says. Dude, it matters. Like, it matters. Like, I did all of my research from 99, 2000. So at the start of the century, that's how old we were getting. It matters. Like, it's better than 3 and 4. So 6 out of 8 teams in both the East and both the West statistically are going to make the playoffs if they're in a playoff spot at American Thanksgiving. That's 6 out of 8. That's a big deal, especially when you're looking at an Eastern Conference this year with so many big teams out of a playoff spot. And you're talking Montreal, Florida, Toronto, and then you could look at Pittsburgh, Philly, Columbus, New York. But somebody's not getting in because never since 99, 2000 have 4 teams been out of a playoff spot at Thanksgiving and made it into the playoffs. So it is incredibly unlikely to see all of those teams. At best, it's going to be 2. And so it does matter. So you do have a quarter of the season is over. You can look to see what kind of team you are now, where are our deficiencies, and who are going to start making moves. It's a very important date in the NHL.
So you did a bunch of research about teams that, like, historically over the last 26 years have been the best at getting in when they're out or the best at holding on to a spot when they are in. And, it's a 26-year sample size. There's new coaches, there's new teams, all that stuff. But the one note that I found interesting, and obviously I live it out in Edmonton doing this 3 years in a row is quite the wild statistical anomaly.
Yeah, it's funny when you look at the Oilers because you keep saying, "Wow, they can't get in." The last 3 seasons at American Thanksgiving, the Edmonton Oilers have been out of a playoff spot, and we're all talking about coaching changes and trades, and oh my gosh, they're not going to make playoffs. They've been in the Cup Finals 2 of those 3 years. So for an Edmonton Oilers fan right now, not time to panic. But there are some teams that do. And one of those teams is Toronto Maple Leafs. And I tell you what, how important is last place in your division? It's incredibly important. The Toronto Maple Leafs and Buffalo Sabres right now are battling it out for last in the Eastern Conference. Since 99, 2000, only 2 teams have finished last at Thanksgiving and gone on to make the playoffs. It's only been twice, 24-25. Last year, the Montreal Canadiens last place, and you have to go all the way back to 2007-8 when the Washington Capitals were in last place with 13 points at Thanksgiving. Both went on to make the playoffs. So you're talking about two times out of 26 years. It's very unlikely to finish last and make the playoffs. It can be done, but Toronto's got a big concern. Of all the teams that have to climb their way out of the Thanksgiving doldrums and make a playoff spot, no more pressure is on than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So I'm going to put some heat on you, PD. I want to know what team you think that is in the playoffs, because there's always this song and dance, right? We look at last year's playoffs,
Sure.
like, okay, well, if this team is getting in, who's getting out? It's tough. What team do you think right now that is a new team that's in the playoff? Obviously, the Pacific Division has a lot. You talk about Ducks, Kraken, Mammoth. There's a lot to go off of here. Who is the team that is making the playoffs this year right now that stays in? That's a new squad.
Yeah, I think of the teams you mentioned, there's some that are going to fall. I know you guys talked about the Islanders and Rangers. I don't think either one of those teams gets in this year. I think they're both falling out, and that's because you got to look at Montreal and Florida, and even Toronto have to slide into. Somebody's got to fall out. But of the new teams getting in, I do think it's Utah. And I tell you what, I've been buying and selling Utah stock all season long. It depends on what streak they're in. They're a very streaky team. When they're hot, they're hot. When they're not, they're not. This is a team, you saw Logan Cooley go off last night. This is a team that plays better at home. And they've played more road games than home games to this point. And they finish off the season playing more at home. This is going to favor this Utah club. But what I always look at right now, I look at who can defend better. And one of the things that Utah has done with this experienced veteran decor is they've been able to defend better. And I think that's going to be the big key when you start looking at some of these teams that are trying to struggle to find their way in. And right now, the one that's on that precipice for me is the Utah Mammoth. I don't think Seattle can hang on. I think the Islanders are going to have a tough time. And Detroit is the one in the East that hasn't been in a long time. that might be able to do it, but they're 23rd in goals against per game. They're 29th in 5-on-5 goal differential. And I talk about defending being so important. I do worry that Detroit can hold on defensively. When you look at all those teams below you in the East, they're going to start climbing pretty soon.
Yeah, PD, I found it interesting too. You had some stats here that San Jose is 14 for 14 when they got in. Philadelphia is 11 for 11. Florida's 5 for 5 at that standpoint. Now, on the other side of it, teams that are out right now that should be in the playoffs, is there somebody there that you feel totally confident? And I know we get a lot of Florida Panthers love, right? This is a team, it feels like it's just inevitable until they get on a run. They get in, next thing you know, they're in the Cup final. But is there anyone for you that is like lighting the lamp that you feel like they're going to get in the playoffs, even though right now they're not in the spot?
Yeah, and we've mentioned them already. It's the Edmonton Oilers. And because, one, they've been there before, and two, they play a style of hockey that right now they're struggling to defend on 5-on-5. Their goaltending hasn't been great and secure, but this team can outscore problems. And when I sat on here a week ago and talked about Leon Draisaitl not putting in the effort, and he knows when he needs to, well, then he goes out and tears it up for a few days. This team is good enough that I think they can turn it on. And I do think that's a team that can outscore problems. And I think Edmonton makes the playoffs. The one that's a concern, we keep saying Florida. Well, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. But be careful, because you start running out of runway. And so you look at teams like Toronto, Montreal, and Florida are all out of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference right now. They're not all getting in. Like, not everybody can make the playoffs. Montreal, of those three teams, to me, if their goaltending can stay and perform the way Montembeault did last year, and Dobish can perform the way he did earlier in the season, Montreal can score, and Montreal plays with pace. And I think Montreal can sneak in. I do start to worry about Toronto. I can't believe we're talking about Toronto making the playoffs. Like, that's insane to me right now. This is a team that potentially was looking at maybe an Eastern Conference title. Like, at Thanksgiving, the American Thanksgiving, Toronto is in a lot of trouble, and there's chaos in that locker room. So I'm concerned about Toronto.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The thing that, and maybe this is a mistake I make, like you touched on the Florida Panthers, we all just kind of go, they'll get healthy and they'll turn on the Jets, but like, they're not getting Barkov back. Like, that's an important part of this. Like, if he comes back, it's not till the playoffs. So like, if you're, let's say they continue to be, we'll call it mediocre here for the next month, and then Matt Tkachuk comes back, but you're 7 points out of a playoff spot and there's 5 teams you need to jump. With how equal and mushy everything in the East is, 7 points back in January might be a death sentence.
Yeah, and there's so many teams right now that are going through injury problems. It's not just Florida. So Tampa Bay, we talked about, I was the one that you guys talked about early in the show about Cooper being on the hot seat. I said that on this show, that things didn't look right there. That Tampa Bay team right now, they're as good as anybody in the East. So you do see teams that are performing well in the East. That means, again, that somebody can't get in. And I think we're just assuming that Florida is going to be in a playoffs because they won the Cup twice in a row. But look at their roster right now. Look at this is the team that did really well because of their lower six lineup and how they did in filling in spots. But now these injuries are pushing those guys either higher in the lineup, or with Luosterainen, a guy that you really needed, he's out of the lineup. So the runway will continue to get shorter and shorter. I don't think Toronto or Florida or Montreal is going to panic until we get to January. So I do think these are teams that all think they're going to be fine. And I even think Toronto internally going, we're going to be fine. But I don't know. It's a big hill. I do think January now for the Florida Panthers is going to be a date you can look at, because we've seen it with Florida. They are going to acquire bodies, and some of these teams aren't. And that's where Utah is going to be different, because Utah, Philadelphia, some of these fringe teams, they're not selling the farm at the trade deadline. They're not. They've been too long through the rebuild. They are not going to be all in, even though their fan bases may want them to be. They won't be. They won't sacrifice the future for the short term. And that's where these teams that you see now are going to start to separate themselves even further as the season goes on.
Yeah,
Petey,
I think that's
as always, appreciate. Oh, go ahead, Hutz.
No, I was just going to say, we got the PD. You're the bump, buddy. You talk about Cooper, then the Lightning get going. You talk about Leon not scoring, he starts scoring. The Leafs and Panthers, I might hedge them. They might get going here.
You have to buy.
Talks about them, they're going to get going.
Yeah, and you know what it is? They just sit in the list. I'm sure that all the brass of those teams are. Brad Treliving's tuned in right now, going,
there we go.
And they're going to turn on. It's the PD reverse bump on Daily Faceoff Live.
Hey, I like that. PD, appreciate your time as always. We'll chat again next week.
Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.